Unless you want to do it? Okay.
Pledge of allegiance.
It has been requested that we all stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Over
Would you lead us,
here.
please?
You bet I will. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In theory.
Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you're here for our first forum, Cedar Valley Legislative Forum of 2025. This forum is sponsored by many organizations in the Cedar Valley. On the back of your agenda, you will see a list of them. There's also a sign over there on the counter. There are some agendas over on the counter if you wish them. And there's some frozen cookies because they've been in my car all day long. But if you like frozen cookies, they should be great. I just want to explain a little bit of history. This forum was started in the 1970s to provide an opportunity for legislators to share information about issues in legislation and to hear from those who elected them to respond to constituent questions. We have one rule at this forum, and that is we are all civil to each other. 12 legislators, 8 Republicans and 4 Democrats representing the Cedar Valley and surrounding areas are invited to each forum. We want to thank Mike Dargan of the League of Women Voters of BlackHawk-Bremer counties for facilitating streaming services. And a recording will be available on the Cedar Valley Legislative Public Forum website. And we thank the legislators are here today. I want to introduce them to you. Representative Bob Kressig, Senator Bill Dotzler, Senator Dave Sires, and Representative Jerome Ames. And with that, we are going to begin. Our topic this evening is fiscal policy, and we have 2 experts here to talk about it. Our first expert who's going to come up and talk to us is from Labor, and his name is Chuck Ketcher, and he's from IBEW 288.
Right here.
Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Chuck Ketcher. I serve as the business manager for W Local Union 288. With nearly 21 years of experience in the electrical construction industry, since completing my military service to the United States Marine Corps, I began my journey as an inside wireman apprentice in 2004. I'm deeply thankful for the opportunity I received at the time, which has equipped me with the knowledge and job prospects for a lucrative career, along with exceptional insurance and retirement benefits. Tonight, I am not here to discuss our apprenticeship program, but rather to address how recent changes to unemployment benefits have harmed and may continue to harm working families in Iowa. Governor Reynolds, in her condition of the state address, mentioned plans to cut unemployment insurance payments in half, claiming it would save Iowa businesses $1 billion, that this money would flow through businesses of all sizes into our communities. Unfortunately, the trickle-down concepts have not benefited working individuals in the state. In 2022, Governor Reynolds signed a bill reducing the maximum duration of earned benefits from 26 weeks to 16 weeks. Additionally, benefits for plant closings were reduced from 39 to 26 weeks. Currently, only 7 states offer a maximum of 16 weeks of benefit, Iowa is included. So we're in the bottom of the country. For those unfamiliar with unemployment benefits, you must have worked qualifying hours in the previous 4 quarters to receive them. If you do not meet the required hours, your benefits may be reduced or non-existent. Benefits are granted only if a worker loses a job through a fault of not of their own, whether they're laid off, plant closing, etc. If you're fired or quit, you do not qualify for unemployment in Iowa. Having worked in the construction industry, I have experienced various economic cycles, from times of abundant work to periods of scarcity. This volatility is typical in our field. Each day you work, you ultimately are working yourself out of a job. Therefore, it is inevitable that you will face unemployment between projects. During these times, you receive no retirement plan benefits, nor insurance benefits, contributions. No one is profiting from unemployment. Everyone is eager to return to work as soon as possible, especially in the construction trades. After a strong job market in the Cedar Valley over the past couple of years, we are now witnessing significant layoffs in the area. The lower unemployment rates that have allowed the unemployment insurance trust fund to grow. While the maximum number of weeks for benefits have been cut in half, this is not a time to tamper with the funding. Please remember that we are not far removed from the Great Recession. Had those changes been in effect during that time, the recovery would have been prolonged and painful for working people and their families, leading to dire consequences for both businesses and Iowa families alike. That's my prepared statement. So I know like there has been some layoffs and some sizable employers in Waterloo. And that's also trickled down to us. This is where trickle down does work. The construction industry, there's less work for our people. So we're starting to see some guys coming back. And we're constantly having people come in our union hall now being laid off from John Deere in the area looking to get in our apprenticeship program. So, and there's, you know, that whole unemployment trust fund is swelled up because unemployment has been low. Not been a need for it, but it's like anything, like a pension fund. I'm a pension trustee too. One way to bankrupt something is to quit funding it. And I don't think this is the time to do that. I wish people, I'm just asking for all of our politicians to reconsider or whatever they want to do, because right now it's not the time. We're seeing plant closings all over the state right now. And we are in an egg state, and we're in trouble when the egg industry is coming. If anybody would like to talk to me, they have kids interested in the building trades. I am also president of the Waterloo Building Trades. They want to be a plumber, pipe fitter, electrician, iron worker. Have them get a hold of me because there is good job and career opportunities in that. And you don't have to just work in the Cedar Valley, you can travel all over. So, does anybody have any questions for me?
We'll wait for the questions, okay? Thank you very much. Next, we have Tim Jameson from the Blackhawk County Auditor Office. Give us another viewpoint.
Thank you. Yes, Tim Jameson, I'm the real estate tax manager in the BlackHawk County Auditor's Office. Part of my job is providing the property values that our local governments use to set their budgets. I also calculate and send out 72,000 property tax bills every year, and no, I cannot lower yours. It's all a formula. I don't control any aspect of that. So anyway, I'm here to speak briefly about the impact of recent property tax legislation on local governments. And while it's fair to say that we all understand the legislatures and governor's desire to reduce property taxes, and I think we're all on board with that, we want to make sure that it's done in a way that doesn't jeopardize local government's ability to provide those services that our friends and neighbors in the community are asking for. To that end, there's a couple of things that tend to happen with property tax legislation. And I'll go back a few years. We like it when the legislature finds a new way of funding services to take that burden off of property taxpayers. And if we go back a couple of years, counties used to fund mental health care costs with property taxes. So the legislature stepped in and said, we're going to take over that cost. Counties aren't going to levy taxes for property taxes anymore. And the very next year, the county saw a reduction in its property tax rate. So that's new money coming in that reduces our taxes. The other thing that tends to happen, and has happened more with House File 718, is the legislature says you just can't have any more taxes. Nothing to replace it, it just goes away and you have to make do. So that's kind of what we saw with House File 718. And I'll talk just a little bit about specific impacts on the Blackhawk County budget. One of the things that House File 718 did was created a new property tax exemption for homeowners age 65 and older. The way that works is this year you're getting $2,450 of taxable value off of the value that's used to calculate your taxes. So that comes out to, in Waterloo, about $200, $180 this year. and that doubles to $6,500 in taxable value next year, so it'll save you over $300. The problem is that even though that's saving you money, it's coming right out of the city, county, and school district budgets, and it's not being backfilled by the state. House File 718 also took a military exemption. If you're honorably discharged veteran and you own your home, you used to be able to get $1,852 off your taxable value for your tax raises or your tax bills calculated. That was doubled or more than doubled to $4,000 this year. Again, that money just goes away. It's saving money, and I appreciate that, but it's coming directly out of local government budgets, and it's not being backfilled by the state. Specific to BlackHawk County, this year we expect to lose $478,000 in tax revenue due to the Homestead 65 exemption. And that's just the county portion. The cities are losing some, the school districts are losing some, the assessor, the Hawkeye Community College, all of the taxing bodies. So $478,000 is a fair chunk of change in our budget. The military exemption not being backfilled cost us $112,000 this year. Again, just the county's portion, not City Waterloo or Cedar Falls or any of the school districts. So again, that's money out of the system that's not being replaced. If I go back 1 year prior to House File 718, there used to be a business property tax credit program, and this was a program where the legislators saw that there was an undue or an excessive burden on commercial industrial property owners. They created a business property tax credit that those property owners could apply for, and it reduced a portion of their property tax bill off the top. And then the legislature, the state of Iowa, fully reimbursed the cities and counties and school districts for the money that was lost. A couple of years ago, that business property tax credit was removed, and it was replaced with a new method to calculate a commercial industrial property tax bill. Basically, the first $150,000 of value for those bills was taxed as a residential property at the residential rollback rate. So again, that saved all of those commercial industrial property owners money, which I appreciate. And the state actually at that point said that we would backfill or give money back to the local governments for the amount that was lost, but they were going to keep the total allocation $125 million. Legislative Fiscal Bureau or Legislative Service Agency said they thought it would be at least 2 years before we saw that start to whittle away where we wouldn't get our full replacement. This is the second year that we're in right now. We got a notice in September that we were only going to get 80% of what our backfill should have been. So for BlackHawk County, again, just the county, not the city school portion, that cost us $142,000 in revenue. That was revenue we budgeted and counted on too, taken out of our budget. So back to House File 718. It was followed up last year by Senate File 2442, which I think mostly kind of cleaned up some of the unintended consequences of House File 718. But one of the things that did was limited the growth of local city and school budgets, or city and county budgets, not schools. Basically said if your taxable value or your tax base grew a certain amount, you would have to reduce your tax levy proportionately so that you wouldn't have excessive growth. I guess, for example, if you grew BlackHawk County, if you grew less than 2.75% in your tax base, you didn't get reduced. So you could keep your 350 general basic levy right where it was. But if you grew more than 2.75% and less than 4, you had to reduce that 350 by 1%. So you're basically saying just because you had a windfall in your tax base growth, you can't take all of that tax money and spend it. For BlackHawk County this year, we had 3.17% growth, which means we had to have a 1% reduction, and our 350 levy was reduced to $4.65 for the next year, which seems small. Overall, that cost us the ability to raise $214,000. So again, not insignificant to us in our budget. I got one more or two more for you. One of the other things that House File 718 did, and I think it was a good idea, it required the county auditor to mail property tax notices to all the taxpayers in the county. Basically, what it included was the proposed budgets of the city, the county, and the school district. And told you when they were going to have a public hearing on their tax levy and how much they were going to raise. It scared and confused a lot of people because it was brand new this year. I got a lot of phone calls in our office after those went out. But it was essentially just a notice. If you didn't get the newspaper or hear about it some other way, you had it mailed to you. If you want to talk about the budget, here's when and where you can go talk to them about. It also included on the back, supposedly the impact on what it would mean to your property, but really it was more of a generic, here's what it means to $100,000 house, not specific to your property, which further confused people. But I think the overall idea was good. The problem was we had to spend $30,000 to mail this out. It was not in my budget. We found it and we mailed it out. It's all borne by the county. You can't go to the cities and the school districts to do it. But again, not a bad idea, but when you talk about unfunded mandates, that's a pretty clear unfunded mandate. I know there's a bill that was introduced last week, House File 39, that would kind of change that statement so that it would be specific to your property instead of just here's what taxes would happen, what happened to tax bill on a $100,000 house. It would be here's what happened to your house specifically. Again, I think that's better. It's less confusing, but it also is a 40% increase in the number of those that we're going to have to mail it out. Right now, if you own 5 properties in Waterloo, I have to send you 1 notice. If you own 5 properties in the statements have to be specific to your property, I have to send you 5 notices. Postage and print goes up. Lastly, there was another portion of House File 718, and here I will applaud the legislature and then take it back a little bit. In Waterloo, some of you may be familiar, and I think Evansdale and Gilbertville, they have Section 404 tax abatements. And in Waterloo, I'm more familiar with that. If you build a new house, pretty much anywhere in Waterloo, you can get 3 years of no taxes, as an incentive to build a house. House File 718 said, we're going to keep that, except you now have to pay the school portion of the taxes. So the school districts are still going to get taxes off of that. A little less of an incentive for people to get it, but I think it was an attempt by the legislature, and I don't want to put too much words in their mouth, to help those school districts. If you were seeing a lot of new students coming into your district because you could build a house and get 3 years of no taxes, they wanted the districts to be able to get some revenue from those houses, to help pay for the teachers and educate their students. So great idea. The problem is, as the person who has to calculate those tax bills, this is enormously complicated. It is really, really complicated. And when you're dealing with 70,000 properties over multiple tax districts and with TIF districts, we're still working. We've been 2 years now, we've been working as auditors across the state to try to figure out how to make this thing work. So again, that's an example where I think there was a great idea. I just wish they'd have talked to us a little bit at the local level about how difficult this was going to be to implement. We will get it done, but it'll be hard. Anyway, I've rambled on for way too long.
No question.
It was Gene's day.
I got a question. Yeah, so I appreciate your comments, and but I was just curious. One of the biggest things I heard from residential owners and business owners was the amount of the increase they saw this session. I know it's property value and that's where you go with it, but that's one of the areas that landowners and business owners have big concerns about.
The formulas that are set, and this is a much longer conversation, I appreciate that. The formulas that are set for distinguishing between classes of property, the rollback. As a residential property owner this year, your assessed value is $100,000. You're paying taxes based on 46% and change of that. If you were an industrial property owner, commercial property owner, you're paying at 90%. There's things that have happened over the years to shift those percentages. And what it does is it doesn't increase or decrease the overall tax load, but it shifts it between a residential property owner to a commercial property owner. For a lot of years, historically, over like the last 10 years, I could say about 8 of those years, that shift went from commercial property owners onto homeowners. When you went from the 100% rollback to the 90% rollback on commercial property owners, that shift was dramatically on.
So that's what caused the increase?
It
That was
shifted,
my question.
no, it shifted back this year. And the reason it happened this year is because the rollback factors are calculated on a residential property. You can't grow more than 20% in taxable or 3% in taxable value statewide. Assessed values went up 20% statewide. So that caused the residential rollback to go from 54% down to 46%. So if your property increased 17% in assessed value, your taxable value was flat as a residential property owner. As a commercial property owner, that 90% stayed at 90%. Commercial properties grew 20% as well. Now they got a little bit of a benefit from the rollback, the first 150,000 being taxed as residential. But if you're John Deere with a $5 million plant, that's a drop in the bucket. So what happened was residential property owners didn't see as much of an increase, but commercial property owners saw a very large increase. Now there will be individual homeowners who may have saw a very large increase as well. You know, if the assessor valued their property much higher, but it's those shifts in the rollback that push that burden back and forth. And last year in BlackHawk County, that burden got shifted heavily onto commercial property owners.
Yeah. Well, Tim, just I made a couple of comments, questions. I've been on the Ways and Means Committee for 23 years. And when you say it's complicated because one thing can tip a whole bunch. But really what caused all this, and I got caught up in it myself, is when COVID hit, it shut down the material streams and everything went up about 30%. So it cost, I was just happened to do a major addition on my house. And I think at the time, I figured it would be about 250,000. I had to pay 30% more for the thing. And so now all homes are being assessed at what it costs to build a new home. And everybody is getting hit for that.
Right.
Now that costs of materials are dropping, we're not seeing the bounce the other way. And I know cities and counties across the state benefited from that and kind of made up for all the other shortfalls that they had over previous legislation. Some I voted for, some I didn't. I mean, how the hell do you vote against cutting property taxes if you're a legislator? You know, because that is the most unfair tax there is. If you look at the three streams of taxes, income tax, the fairest, based on the ability to pay, sales tax, not based on any ability to pay, but really based on, you don't have to buy a big ticket item if you don't have a lot of money. And then doesn't make a damn bit of difference what kind of your income is. And when your property tax come, it's what you have built up and saved. Right. So we do have a real problem there. And we should have worked on property taxes instead of income taxes. Now they cut it to where we can't go any farther, and this is where we're at. They are still talking about it in the legislature. And part of the problem that we had was when they didn't cover the rollback, because I was on the committee, the conference committee that made that deal in order to get the commercial property tax cuts taken care of, and the difference between the residential and the commercial, when you had commercial downstairs and residential upstairs, that they were charged, the upstairs apartments were being charged commercial rates when they were really residential. So that's why we ended up saying, okay, we're going to split that out and you lost that revenue. But in order to get it passed, we demanded, when we were in control, Democrats controlled in the Senate, Republicans were in control of the House, Republican governor, we said, okay, if we're going to agree to all this, we can't hit the cities that hard because they're already taking general commercial hits. So in order to get it done, it's supposed to have been etched in stone. They signed the line and we covered the backfill until a couple years ago when the Republicans had full control. Guess what they said? Well, you can't hold one legislative session to another one, General Assembly. And our word doesn't mean anything, so we're going to get rid of it. So we lost that $150 million.
Bill, if I may interrupt, you're going to have an opportunity to talk and just,
Okay, well, I thought that's where we were. He's here now.
we're going to give Tim a break and let him sit down for a moment, okay?
I had a question after that, but go ahead.
Well, you can ask him the question during your turn to talk, okay? That would be fine if Tim is willing to stay and answer, but thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, right, good information, and I will utilize it.
Okay, let's start with legislators' comments, and we're going to give you 8 minutes to talk, okay?
8 minutes?
I already talked 5.
Give him 16, he can take my time.
Well, we're going to start with you, okay?
Okay, well, here we are. I think this is our first forum, isn't it?
Mhm.
And I just wanted to let you know, serving another term in the legislature and some of my committees that I'm on, environmental protection, local government, public safety and transportation. Then I'm on a appropriations subcommittee and ranking member of transportation, infrastructure and capital appropriations. So the first 2 weeks that we met, it was really nice. We all seemed to get along. I don't know how long that'll last, but yeah, it was. I think we had first 2 weeks were good. We had a few. We had some committees that we met on, and then some bill assignments. So for a lot of you, that the process is a bill gets drafted, and then it gets assigned to a committee, and then the committee decides to hold the meeting in committee. And then they assign subcommittee votes on it, and then it goes back to the committee, then it goes back to the floor in the House, and then it repeats the whole thing in the Senate. I think from my experience talking with people, a lot of them don't realize how the process works. I know I've been working on some bills. Timmy and I have worked on one with firefighters on cancer. And I've got a bill that the Hawkeye Community College sent to me about allowing mental health services in those buildings to help with students and those things. So we'll have to see. I know that budget infrastructure bill, that transportation budget is, that's pretty bipartisan, and transportation seems to be pretty bipartisan. Public safety, it's a little bit, and then local government, we'll have to see how that all unfolds. But, right now we're just going through the process. I'm sure I have seen, we had that one bill that was filed by a senator, Bossman or Boozman, or what was it? Bosselman? Yeah, about Minnesota. He wanted to collect the 9 counties on the Minnesota border and bring them into the state of Iowa. I'm thinking, you gotta be kidding me. Why are we even doing that? It kind of reminds me a little bit of that raccoon bounty bill they had last session. So if you get a raccoon, cut the tail off, you can turn it in, you can get $5. It's just, sometimes there's some really unusual things that develop in the process, and that's a little frustrating, but it's good to see everybody, and that's kind of my beginning comments, so I'll throw it over to Bill.
Okay, I won't talk about taxes right away, because that's the biggie. First of all, with the new General Assembly, and we lost one seat from our 16 to 15, so we're shrinking. And because of that, you got to serve on a few more committees. Your workload picks up. And I got elected whip for the Democratic caucus, and that's the position right below the leader. And so you get more speaking engagements. You work mainly on policy planning and that kind of thing, and lead our leadership team, you know, as a partner with Senator Janice Weiner, who is a relatively new legislator, but heavy on experience. She worked for the State Department and all kinds of experience in government over the years. So we've got a great leader. I also serve on the Ways and Means Committee, as you heard, and I got to get you on speed dial, Tim, because we got a lot coming. So, and then I also serve on the Full Appropriations Committee, and I am the ranking member or the senior minority member on the Economic Development budget sub. And that is one of the few budget subs that are held because of Senator Mark Lofgren really believes in making sure that we have, have a good idea what's going on the executive branch and with those areas, which oversees the Economic Development Authority, Iowa Workforce Development, the Labor Division, OSHA, work comp, and also we used to have the Department of Cultural Affairs, and that got eliminated and reorg. I'm the ranking member on the Veterans Committee, being a veteran, and I just spoke at the Capitol on Veterans Day. They put me on Ag Committee because I had a biology background. I'm on the Workforce Committee, which is basically the labor/business community committee, and got a lot to say about unemployment benefits. I'm on government oversight, and then for fun, I'm on international relations, which I thought was a pretty important committee. And I went to Taiwan this summer, and am working on trying to do something with Taiwan, and trying to bring some of their students here through a baseball program. So that's kind of interesting. How much time do I have now?
You're good. They haven't told you to stop yet.
30 seconds.
I kind of used a little bit of time up for before.
It's okay.
But Chuck, I want to talk a little about unemployment benefits. I drafted 3 bills that are going to be we're going to sign on to and put in for consideration this next week. One, and mainly because of what you talked about, we are seeing a tremendous amount of layoffs and terminations because of plant closings across the state. Cedar Valley certainly isn't immune. We lost over 1,000 workers at Deere & Company, the independent parts suppliers. That echoes all through there. It has a lot to do with the ag economy. We are in competition with Argentina and Brazil. And if we poke China in the eye, we're going to see more competition. So I hope our president understands that. And because they don't need to buy their grain from us. Taiwan is a great purchaser, mainly of soybeans. And so that's something to be concerned about. One of the things about the unemployment system is it's insurance, and it is built up. There's a huge amount of money sitting there, and it builds up to a point where once so much money's in there, the employers who lay people off their rates drop down on the chart, and they keep dropping down. And that unemployment insurance money can only be used for insurance. Some people think the governor said unemployment insurance is a hammock and that people are too lazy to work, so they're just swinging in the breeze, taking it easy. Well, I got news for you. Unemployment benefits do not cover the cost of somebody's home or car payments, and dear workers are suffering because what happened with the younger generation, they get in there, they're making good money. My generation at 30 years of Deere did the same thing. We started buying houses, we bought cars, we, bought boats, everybody was heading to the river. They did stuff, and then we got laid off. We had a major shutdowns and strikes during the 80s. And people were upside down. Those benefits made a big difference. And plant closings, we lost benefits there. When you lose like what happened in Sara Lee, when up in New Hampton up there, when Sara Lee closed, it was a one-horse town. When that plant shut down, people had nowhere to go, and they owned their homes, and they built equity up into it. And if you don't have time to transition and find a job or figure something out, you got to sell your place. And you lose your equity. They were giving their homes away up there. So it hurt them, even with full benefits, and now they cut it. So we are going to try to improve and go back with plant closings, improve the weeks on there, and also deal with the system. This isn't a legislative problem. The executive branch decided that when you apply for unemployment benefits, you used to be able to go to one spot, sign up, and do your searches and get your job done. Now you have to sign up in 3 places, 2 additional places. And if you're not aware of it, you lose those weeks and you're going to lose some payments. So we're going to try to fix that. Also, another problem, Deere & Company has temporary shutdowns that last for 2 weeks. I've just heard Dubuque, and they're going to do it here in Waterloo too. When they have a temporary shutdown, you're going to have to look for a job, even though you're going to go back to Deere. And it used to be, workforce development said, well, we're not going to put everybody through that process because they're going to go back. So guess what? They are going to make the workers do more and try to hunt to find places that are going to tell them no. And which is going to be easier. But anyway, we're going to try to fix that. So those are 3 bills. Thank you.
Thank you. Timmy?
Good job. Thank you guys for everybody for being here. I do appreciate it. Sorry I was late. I work, and so I work until 4:30. So I left a little early and I skated across town and we made it a little late. So this year, I'm on 6 committees, so I like to stay busy, and we are going to stay busy. I'm on ranking member of appropriations, which puts me on the leadership team again. That is kind of an interesting place to be, better than taxes. I get to watch the money where it's going and where it's coming and who's spending it. I also this year took ranking member of we have a new committee called Federal Money and Other. So I'm also ranking member of that, because very curious of what we're going to do on that. We met one time, and so I think my colleagues are very curious about what we're going to do in that particular committee as well. The charge really is to examine all federal money coming into the state of Iowa, find out where it's actually going and what it's being spent on. I am told by my colleagues that the new administration is going to be not as stringent on the strings attached to federal money, and that we'll have more leeway with federal money. Now, I don't know that we know that for sure, but that is what they're hoping or assuming at this juncture. So one of the things that they want to look at is how we can bring that federal money in and where all can we spend it. And so one of the things I did bring up, however, is that we miss out on federal money too when we don't do things in the state that we could do to match or receive federal money. So I did ask that we look at that as well, i.e. feeding children last summer. We could have brought federal money in and done that, and that wouldn't have been that big of a deal. So they assure me that we're going to look at all federal money and where it's going and who's spending it. And so that's going to be kind of an interesting committee to come back with. That Pat wanted that, Representative Grassley wanted that specific, and I don't believe that committee is in on the Senate. I think we just have it on the House side. I'm also on environmental protections with Bob, public safety, HHS. I continue to be on, and new this year is ethics, and I really hope that we don't meet very often. Ethics only meets if we have an ethical issue in the House. So I'm hoping we have 2 meetings and we're done meeting in that particular committee, because if we're meeting, that means there's issues. People can't behave themselves. So I am, like Bob said, we're drafting. We've got a lot of bills drafted. Actually, I have a lot of local bills drafted. I've got bills in the hopper for the league, for mental health, for our schools, dentists. A local dentist has some things, domestic violence with the House of Hope. So we've got a lot of things moving and shaking right now. With all of those, trying to connect my counterpartners on the other side of the aisle so that I can get some support with those bills. If I don't find support, then they're not going to move. So building those relations and doing that. Representative Losi and Representative Wilson and I continue to work on opioid. Representative Moore, who is my chair of approach, he and I think that we have an agreement with the Senate, so we actually might move an opioid bill this year. So it actually might get some teeth. We give a little, right? That's part of the game. And so I'm hoping that the Senate is currently drafting it. They're the ones that held it up last year. They're drafting what they want. Our biggest thing is there has to be some sort of transparency. We just can't throw money out there and who knows who gets it and what it's being spent on. So the procedure will be for mental health folks or for folks that will be working in that area is that you'll send your request ideas programming to HHS, because that's where the Senate wants it to be hubbed. And then they will present it back to the legislature, and we will then be able to say yay or nay and get it distributed. Now, with all that said, that kicks that down 1 more year. If you're doing the math in your head, that prolongs it from actually getting into the hands or helping families and individuals another whole year, just in case you were doing math. And then 2, still working with, from a tax standpoint, try to stay away from them, but working with Cindy and Billy locally on those levies, those voted levies. We did a property tax bill 2 years ago that removed those voted levies that people voted, say, yes, they wanted money to go to the Grout Museum. Yes, they wanted money to go to the libraries. Well, that bill eliminated that. And so now you're seeing layoffs at the library. The Grout Museum is going to be probably in trouble this year. So working with Billy and Cindy locally, they really got a good campaign, and they've been really consistently trying to push and do a correction. I did ask Representative Grassley to meet with me next Wednesday. He's aware of the problem, and I am hoping that he is open to some sort of correction there. I'm not going to hold my breath, but I am hoping that he is open to some sort of correction there, because that hurt, that not just locally. I mean, that hurt municipal bands, it hurt museums, it hurt libraries across Iowa. So it's not a partisan issue, and it's not just a Waterloo issue. It is a state Iowa thing, and so it is something that we need to correct, because all that money now goes into the city's budget. And so now the libraries and museums are competing against fire and police and other issues. And so as the property taxes, or as the money coming into the city has gotten smaller, the libraries and the museums don't really hold, that much weight to get those monies. And so there are already layoffs happening in all those areas. And I think that's all. My one concern, I'm meeting with the governor's staff next week to go through the budget with them. I've asked for a meeting there. They have Craig Paulson, and the staff is going to meet with me and just kind of do a walkthrough with the budget. They did that 2 years ago, and I find that very helpful. And it's an opportunity for me to ask questions, not to get you or gotcha, but just to really ask questions on what they really are thinking. And then also I'm meeting with HHS because I have some concerns about some of the Medicaid things that they're bringing forward. towards the state, and they're wanting to do, they are just also convinced that we have people out there working the system. And now we all, there are a small group of people that probably do, but for the vast majority of those folks, if they could work, they would. And people are not taking advantage of the system. But I just want to visit with HHS, and I've got a good working relationship with them. And I just kind of want to see where they're at with that whole program going forward. So I'll pass it on to Senator Sires.
Yes.
Hey. Thank you very much. The thing that's always so surprising to me is where they think Republicans and Democrats are so far apart. We all want the same things.
Well, get your mic.
My golly, I can do that.
Let's get it closer, that's all.
It helps on the,
Okay, is this better? Is this better? Okay, sorry about that. My voice is usually pretty low, so I don't usually worry about that too much. Democrats and Republicans want the same things. We just have different ways that we want to go about it. My sister campaigned for me, and I'm the one that knocked out number 16. So it's me, it's my fault. And yeah, I understand. But the thing about my sister is she's the biggest Democrat I've ever met. And she campaigned for me like one of Santa's elves. And her friends would say, why do you campaign for your brother? You guys don't agree on anything. And she always said, but he's honest. And I know he wants to do the right thing. And that's what I'm there for. And I'm there to represent Senate District 38. And when these lobbyists, see, I'd like to vote out all the lobbyists. I don't think they should be there pushing their own interest and be paid. And that doesn't make me very popular with especially the lobbyists. Now, I've had some people say, well, I like to listen to both sides and then decide from there. And I say, well, you better come down here with some experiences in your life so you kind of know what's going on. And then don't talk with lobbyists, talk with your constituents. Those are the people that are important. And all the things here that have been talked about, I have different views on a lot of them, but only to get the same goal. I think there needs to be some, when you start to talk about taxes, there needs to be some TIF reforms. Now, the cities think this is the greatest thing ever, but who it cheats is the taxpayer. The thing that amazes me is when you create a TIF district, any taxes generated in that district stay within that district. We have some districts in Senate District 38 that are 50 years old. Now, the TIF that they call it is tax increment financing. And that's fine for the first 4 years, but then the rates are the regular tax rate. But the thing they're not telling you is even after that property's been paid for in that infrastructure, they continue to hold that within that district. And it took me 4 years to figure it out. And it took me to figure out all these different things. We need to have an end date on these TIF districts because what happens is the state has to backfill that money to the schools. Now, the thing that I found out, I just met with Hawkeye Community College, and they're down 4% because of the TIF districts, and I'm going to find out why. Because the state is supposed to backfill that, because the portion that normally goes to the county, which we've talked about county taxes, that portion stays within that TIF district as well. Now, that's only 10%, but pretty soon that starts to add up when you have urban areas and they're grabbing TIF for specific reasons, mostly to benefit developers who I think should be willing to invest anyway. I don't think they need this. I don't think cities need to give away property. In all the investments that my family has made, we've never taken any government money for anything. We've never had a break in our taxes. We've never had any of these things. Now, everybody thinks I'm always for big business and all these other kinds of things. Then you start to talk about unemployment. We've employed people. We've been in the manufactured housing business, the construction business before that, but we started in the manufactured housing business in 1963. We have never laid off anyone. We hire seasonal help. We hire others. We say it's a part-time or whatever we say. But our actual unemployment number that we pay in, since we have never, ever in all those years, it's about 60 years, is now down to nothing. We don't pay any into that. And when they start to have that bigger number, well, I agree. the ones who have the seasonal people and they use it as a bank, they are going to pay more because they're the ones that use out of it. And that has to be figured into that. I could go on and on. I've jotted down just a couple of notes here, but you know, when you go on to unemployment, I just had a couple kids in the mobile home park, and they said his dad came to me and he said, I'm trying to get the kids a job, but when I go there, it's kind of a nightmare. And I thought to myself, well, maybe that's where the problem came in, because you've been doing your kids' work. And I didn't say that because I always try and be very polite. But he said it was kind of a mess and you had to do a lot of different things and jump through a lot of hoops. And I said, well, maybe you ought to have the kids do that. But I'm for everybody being employed just like everybody else is. Now, the things that I'm on, and when you say that, a lot of people will say that Republicans are not for unions. Well, when I got down there, that's pretty much what they have is a union on the Senate side. The longer you're there, the better positions you get. Me being a freshman, yeah, they weren't so great. So I am on the DNR, and I told them at that time, I said I should be the chair of that. And they all laughed. And they said, well, you can't be the chair of that. You're a freshman senator. And I said, well, is there somebody more qualified to chair that? I said, I have a license in water treatment, wastewater treatment, and water distribution. I said, is the chair of that got any of those things? Well, no. Well, what qualifies her then? Well, she's a farmer. And I went, huh. And I said, did she ever do any hunting? Because it also covers recreational things and all of those things. And they said, well, I don't think so. I said, well, I've hunted with my bow and arrow, killed a couple of bears. I said, I think I could qualify for that too, grow up hunting pheasants as a kid. I said, I can qualify for the sportsman side of it. But you get what you get until you've been down there a while. So the thing about it is, I don't know how long I'll be down there, but I'm going to try and represent my district to the best of my ability. And I don't listen to lobbyists. I listen to you, the people. And I don't go to any of these, what do they call them, banquets or social events. No, you won't find me there. When it's over, I drive home at the end of the day. It's only an hour and a half. And then I'm at home, and then I'm around everybody. And these things, I'm on appropriations, agriculture, local government. And the first bill they gave me, believe it or not, it's a mobile home bill. I've been in it my whole life. So that should be pretty easy for me, and it is. And then I'm also on workforce. I'm also on technology. So even us being on different political teams, I like to call them teams, because we get on our team and then we fight with each other. And after it's over, I don't get too excited, because as being around my sister and who worked for me diligently, the nice thing is we're after the same thing, but we have two different ways to get after it. So I got 20 seconds left. And anytime anybody sees me anywhere and you have a question or you want to talk about politics, as my wife knows, I talk it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And thank you very much for having this. And I'll end it right there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Jerome, you've been so patient. We'll finish up with you.
That's fine with me. Good evening, everyone. And I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting on this event. Me, myself, you all pretty much know who I am. My second term down in Des Moines. This year is a little bit different, a lot busier, I guess is the best way to put it. The committees that I've actually been assigned this time around is I'm on Appropriations, Labor and Workforce, Public Safety, Veterans Affairs Committee, and I am the ranking member. You all heard Senator Dotzler say that he was the ranking member on the Senate side. And like him, I had the opportunity to speak before the veterans a couple of days ago, and I pointed that out, that the two ranking members for the Senate and the House are from BlackHawk County. I thought that was pretty neat. You know, for me, that first week was pretty much pomp and circumstance. There wasn't a lot going on, you know, the state of this and that and the other thing. Well, a lot of those things, listening to our governor, you know, one of the things that really stuck with me, Senator Dotzler talked about unemployment and how they've cut it down to 13 weeks and messing with the actual reserve funds for it. You know, I remember I'm a John Deere retiree, retired 33 years, worked there from 1972 till 2010. And back in the early 80s, that was when the layoffs were really strong and happened a lot. But I remember 4 kids, had a house that I was buying, ended up losing the house at that time. But we had 26 weeks of unemployment plus our sub pay from the union. When that ran out, because you couldn't find a job in Waterloo, when that ran out, I got another 26 weeks. So realistically, I had a full year of unemployment to make ends meet. It's not enough to make ends meet. It's enough to try and survive. So left Waterloo, Iowa. And I remember the saying back then, last one to leave Waterloo, make sure you turn the lights on. I don't know if some of you remember that or not, but that's the way it was. Our young people in this day and age, they don't have the opportunities that we had back then. And the only reason is because there are individuals who don't think it's necessary. They think that everyone's lazy, that they don't want to work. But that's not the case. And we know that. So for me, that's the fight. We have to get our individuals in charge because they have the power to do whatever they want at this point in time. Make no bones about it. They have that power. So we have to be able to communicate and get them to understand that, no, it is not working for a certain group of people. It may not be impacting you, but when it impacts my children and the people that I know are struggling, are suffering, then that's a fight. Okay, I'll leave that alone. You know, workforce development, you know, I heard Senator Sire say something about union. Well, one of the things that I tell my union brothers and sisters, you know, you don't have to believe me. Go to the Republican Party platform. I look at and I research what's going on. I don't just look at the Democrats, I look at the Republicans and see what they are about. And if you go to the Republican Party platform under commerce, it states that they want to not change, eliminate the public unions. Straight off. No other words or anything else. Eliminate. That sticks in my craw because for me, I firmly believe that, is that where they're going to stop at? Not if they don't have to. So that's a big one for me. I'm a union person, have been my entire adult life. You know, so I just, that's a sticking point for me. I've also been, you know, like I said, the first week wasn't much. That second week, I had been assigned to 4 different subcommittees, all of them basically public safety. And I just kind of got them here, House File 108, and that was from public safety. And that's the bill for an act relating to the ability of peace officers to file a petition for emergency protective orders on behalf of someone seeking relief from domestic abuse. Well, when I looked at that language, it said a police officer may. In the subcommittee, I said, no, that's not strong enough. A police officer must do something. You know, that for me is big. And those are personal experiences for me as far as what needs to happen. So that wasn't in there. So what I did is I got with staff and started talking with them. So what's going to happen is the people who are in charge of the state are going to be reaching out to the individuals across the state to find out what loopholes are there in that domestic abuse situation that can be closed. And then she's also going to ask them, what is your wish list to make this language stronger? Because for me, domestic abuse is something that can lead to someone's death. So it's important that we strengthen those laws to make sure that if you do something, you're not going to get 4 or 5 chances to do it again. You need to understand that, no, that's not going to happen. Another one that I have is and these are subcommittees that I've been assigned to. This was a bill for an act prohibiting open containers of beverages containing the THC. Okay, so I'm fine with that one from a standpoint of, yes, if you are driving impaired, then yeah, you shouldn't be driving. But this is about open containers. So That's where this one is at. It's just about open containers, having those open containers in a vehicle. And it's mirrored exactly like the alcohol language. So for me, that was a good one to sign on to support. The next one is it's House File 46, and that's a bill for an act relating to law enforcement training concerning motorcycle profiling. You know, there were probably 20, 30 motorcyclists down there, had their long beards, their leathers and everything else on. Well, they are saying that they are being profiled. You know, and it's like, well, welcome to my world. You know, but it's just a matter of those are things that actually are happening to bikers. So I signed on that one. I said, yes, you know, realistically, you should have the same protections that everybody else has. Well, when the officers got in there, they said, well, there was already training for bias, for those types of things, but there was nothing specific for the motorcycles. And then they started talking about costs. Well, there's two different ways you can do. They had one way to do it that was going to be very expensive, but the other way is adding the training online with all of the other training that they do. A lot cheaper way to do it. So I signed off on that one. And then the last one that I had was the one, a bill for an act related to the commission of a criminal offense wearing a mask. I have that one Monday coming up at 12 noon. That particular one, I've only got 20 seconds left. So that one there, when I'm out there, stop and talk to me about it, because that one for me is comedy. So everyone, once again, I look forward to this session, working with all of my fellow Democrats down there to make sure that we are taking care of you all. So thank you.
Thank you. And now it's time for your questions. We're going to ask if you would come up to this microphone over here and tell us your name and if you're representing any group this afternoon. And we would ask you to try to keep your questions to about 2 minutes. So I'm sure you all have questions.
I have a question on all the legislators here about public safety. Do you consider, like most people here probably agree with me, if the alignment, if there's a storm coming through, are they considered public safety in your mind or not? That, you know, without power, without energy, lines down, that's public safety. No different than a police officer or fireman. Same thing with somebody that operates the wastewater treatment plant. The water you drink should be considered public safety. What is your guys' stance on that? Are you saying?
It's a different,
Senator Sires, what's your?
Of course, you know, those are our basic needs, and absolutely that's public safety.
Okay, because like, so you guys do know that, you know, people have been around a while with chapter 20 changing in 2017. Those folks are excluded from public safety. They don't have the rights to bargain like
Yeah.
police officers and firemen. So that just, I would like if we could get a little some discussion on that, you know. I'll talk with you, Senator, sometime about it locally, but.
If I could, one of the things that I introduced last year with our leader was actually putting in the Constitution the right to collectively bargain for unions. It didn't have enough legs to move forward, but my intent is to introduce that again this year, because I think it's so important that it's in our state constitution for individuals to do exactly that and not just have to bargain for wages and not all the other aspects of being a member of a union and the protections that come with it.
And then in the unions, we come from the building trade unions. We also collectively bargain our training. So we have an apprenticeship program. They're second to none. I invite anybody down that goes to Des Moines. A lot of you have been to the training centers at UA Local 33, IBW 347. See how we train our apprentices. And so you guys know we pay for that. That is no taxpayer money. That is money that is deducted from our employer partners that employ, and most of them are union members themselves or came through the trades, and our folks' paychecks. We don't take any state handouts. There's no reason to reinvent apprenticeships for the building trades, because we already do it. We already do it very, very well. I've done it for hundreds of years. So.
Just to comment on that public safety issue. We fought hard to try to expand that. In fact, our officers in our prisons aren't considered public safety. And so they had a hard definition of police and fire. And if you're not carrying a badge, you're not dealing with public safety. But the term public safety really expanded. If power goes out in a situation and you're living in a home and you have to have an oxygen system that's running, that's for the health and safety of an individual and family. So there's plenty of issues about how important our services are in order to provide the well-being and safety of the public. And it's not just keeping somebody from robbing you. There's a lot to that. So thank you for your comments.
Margaret Whiting, I live in Waterloo, so I'm Margaret Whiting, and I live in Waterloo. And my question has to do with finances and the environment in Iowa. And as most everybody knows, Iowa rivers have very high levels of nitrates in the water. And recently, the Iowa DNR failed to list 7 segments of rivers in Iowa on the impaired waters list. And those 7 sections were in the Des Moines River, the Iowa River, the Raccoon River, the Skunk River, and the Cedar River. And so those are included areas that really need to be cleaned up. So the DNR looked into that, and the EPA, the national EPA looked into Iowa's plan on cleaning up the nitrates. And they said the state of Iowa is in violation of the Clean Water Act. And Iowa DNR is going to have to make a TMDL, a total maximum daily load of the amount of nitrates allowed into these segments. And so Iowa's DNR is going to need more funding this year in order to work on cleaning up our rivers.
Yeah,
And so that's my question. I have another unrelated thing, but I heard a rumor, and I hope the rumor is wrong, but I heard some people saying that maybe the Department of Education is going to not teach climate science and evolution in our schools. And I think that would be a horrible mistake. And if we're not teaching climate science to the, they say it's going to be for the grade school and the high schools. And if we aren't teaching climate science, it's really going to hurt these kids who have to know about something that will affect the rest of their lives. Thank you.
Yeah, just thank you for your comments. The water quality issue has been really significant. And part of the problem is the borders that align with the water creeks and things. Farmers are just planting crops right next to them. And we're seeing high levels of, phosphorus and sodium and all those things entering into our waterway. And, I serve on environmental protection, which the last session, the only bill we passed was the raccoon bounty in that committee. So, that's what it was. And, they've got agriculture, they've established some water places where farmers can put in, set aside crops along those. And that has improved, but it still is, what's flowing into our rivers. And if you look at the numbers of cities in the state that rely on surface water for their drinking water, some of them are fairly large communities, and it's a struggle. Cedar Falls, we've got aquifer underneath that is in good shape, but not all of the other parts of the state have it. So I think there's going to be some risk. And if you look at last year with the water that we got, or rain, it was pretty low, and then it expanded pretty significantly as we got on. But water quality is a major issue for me and for several others that serve in the legislature. So I appreciate you bringing that up because it is something we should work on for everybody, not just, certain groups that are at the Capitol, Farm Bureau and those, we need to focus on those improvements.
We have heard that there is going to be some sort of talk on the aquifers, but we'll see if what that really amounts to. We don't know. Bob and I share on that committee, so we'll see what really comes out of that. And I met with the DNR yesterday morning. Yeah. And just we were talking about accessibility at parks, but came up that they are asking for an increase on the budget line for some of the water quality issues that they are going to be tasked with or charged with to start working on. And then we have a group that's working on more buffers across Iowa to kind of help some of that drainage too. And so I think there's small groups happening, but I served before environmental protections. I was on natural resources, and none of those committees have ever really wanted to tackle water quality. And that really is the downfall. The water quality issues or bills goes through ag, and those usually kind of just disappear and they don't see a light of day. So that is the frustrating part. And the rumor that you heard is from from education curriculum, that is true, although I hope that doesn't go forward, but that is something that is stewing at the Capitol.
If I can talk about the environment. Sorry about that. If I can talk about the environment and being an environmentalist, it's truly what I've been my entire life. Now, I don't know how many of you can remember, but do you remember when the Rainbow Warrior went down the Mississippi River? It would have been just after I got married, so it would have been about 82 or 3 right in there. And I was so glad that they did, because what they were doing was finding the polluters that were dumping into the Mississippi River. Now, my dad was a huge conservation guy. And so we even had a canoe trip when I was just a young guy down there to see what kind of quality the Mississippi River was. And a canoe trip in the middle of the summer down the Mississippi is very slow. You have to paddle the whole distance. But the whole point of it is, I've been an environmentalist my whole life, even though I'm a Republican, and I've raised many raccoons, unlike the counterpart that wants to have a $5 bounty, which I think is insane.
It is.
But anyway, I love all the things in our environment. But when the Rainbow Warrior came down, that was one of my first, what I thought was a big donation, and my wife will remember it. And I sent them $100. They weren't asking for any donations, but back then that was pretty big money. And one of the 2 that started Greenpeace, and then had the Rainbow Warrior, sent me a very nice letter, and he thanked me for going ahead and donating without them asking. And I've always been worried about our environment. Now, I'll tell you a little interesting story. A kid that worked for me, also a kid that never took unemployment on me because I employed him the whole time. That goes back to another story. He was a biologist, and what he studied was dragonflies and where they had their larvae. So I was actually quite surprised the Sierra Club or nobody else ever picked up on this. But where the Cedar Falls put in that canoe trail, that was the best breeding ground for dragonfly anywhere in the state. And the water actually in that part of the Cedar River was the cleanest because of the way it came over the dam. And so this kid, while he was working for me, he must have been, I don't know, in his 20s, he was getting his master's degree. He always had all kinds of critters and things in his car when he'd come to work. He had a walking stick, bugs and everything. He was great. But that has always bothered me, that they tore that little area out that was the very best part for dragonfly breeding in the state. And I think we need to do more things to watch out for our environment. And being a Republican, you guys don't think I'm that way, but that's the way I truly am. And that Rainbow Warrior, I still have that letter. So that's all. I just wanted to add that little piece.
Just, if I may, was it somebody else going to talk now? Okay.
Go ahead.
I didn't want to. We get a lot of questions about inadequate funding. I just want to address that. There's all kinds of organizations out there, and this is the fiscal, supposed to be a fiscal type legislative forum. We're in trouble, and I don't expect anybody's asking for any resources above what they got last year to get it. They're not gonna. You know, we looked at the revenue estimating conference that was held in December, and we had a $600 million reduction in the budget that we authorized earlier in the year, in the early session. So if there wouldn't have been a reserve account and carryover money, you would have had to cut 600 million out from now until July 1st. So the original projection for the 26 budget, which we're going to work on this legislative session, is supposed to start on July 1st. So that got pulled back another 400 million. So in other words, because of the most recent tax cuts and the amount of money that's being reduced beyond the projections is $1 billion in about a year's time. So we're going into this session and we'll have one more take a look at it. And there's a lot of factors that say that we're going to probably lower the projected amount for the 2026 year. So if you look at the governor's budget, which I have here, it's basically a status quo budget, except for where she eliminates programs and adds to programs the same amount. So I'm deeply concerned now to say right now we have a structural deficit of about $500 million, which means if we have just what we authorized last year and you had all the built-ins, that without spending more, we're going to be $500 million in the hole. So, but the good news is that because of the rainy day funds that were built up, they have $2 billion in reserves. And those predominantly came from savings from education cuts, not funding at the rate of inflation and where they could be, and the federal American Recovery Act money, which were literally billions to the state of Iowa, which is going to go away. So we have a fat deal. So we can go on for a few years. And if the economy doesn't continue to grow, which Iowa has the second lowest GDP in the nation for states. When the governor spoke, she didn't talk about any of that stuff. So what's happened over the last few years, if you've got a request, no matter what it is, for people, for funding, you're gonna pay hell to get it done. And the one final point to that, the Department of Human Services is 100 people short. And they just sent out notices to all the different places. If you don't have people that take care of the public, then we want you to close the doors and put a note on there saying, call these people, because if you got people that are off sick or you have people on vacation, they don't have the people to cover it. So we're in big trouble. So we got to grow our economy, and I can talk about that later.
Okay.
Sure. Thank you for your support of the food bank, Barb right there in Northeast Iowa Food Bank, and a resident of Hudson. As I look at what our legislative agendas food banks are, educating on SNAP, supporting Double Up Food Bucks, which went through subcommittee this week, which is great, and growing, asking for money, Bill, for the Choose Iowa program to help food banks provide food into the system. As I look at that, one of my biggest fears that's gonna happen. And I'm really glad, Representative Brown Powers, you are on this committee, is looking at federal dollars coming into the state, because we are literally turning back millions and millions of dollars in SNAP benefits that can help people. And when you turn those dollars back, people still have to eat, and they're showing up at the door of food banks. Last year, the food banks statewide, I've been told, distributed 64 million pounds of food. That's more than the year of pandemic. We can't sustain this, and it's really important. And you guys have been great. I thank you, Senator Sires, for coming and visiting the food bank when you were running for office. But we can't sustain this long-term either. But people need to eat, because if they don't eat, they can't work, they can't go to school, they can't get good, all of it. So I just want to make that statement at the beginning of the session, that anything that you need us to show data, to show results of the work we're doing and how government, federal dollars help that situation, we're happy to do that and help let us be a part of the solutions that you come up with. So thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Barb.
Thanks, Barb.
And I'll just put in right now that next month, February 21st, our next forum is on hunger.
I unfortunately am gonna be out of town. Somebody will be there for the
Okay.
meeting. I'll have to come.
Are we-
Hungry.
You might see if some of your staff can come talk to that group, that committee.
Yeah. That'd be great.
That's another reason unemployment benefits are so important. You run out of benefits, you don't have a job, guess where you're going? The food bank.
Thanks, everybody. Tom Ekus with BlackHawk-Bremer. Representative Brown Powers, I'm real curious what you're gonna hear from HHS on Medicaid work requirements or cuts. Cutting Medicaid, this is from several research articles. Cutting Medicaid benefits would likely lead to significant decrease in access to health care for low-income individuals, potentially worsening health outcomes, increasing medical debt, causing economic strain on states due to decreased healthcare spending, particularly in vulnerable populations like children, pregnant women, the elderly, and people with disabilities. This could be manifest as delayed or foregone preventative care, reduced access to necessary medications, increased reliance on emergency rooms for primary care needs. I'd add to that increase in homelessness, incarcerations, follow the bouncing ball. Pay me now or pay me later. So I'll be real curious what they say. If they're going to cut Medicaid, I certainly hope they're going to increase job training programs, fund vocational rehabilitation, because right now those things are impossible. You want people to go to work? There's no training programs. There's no education. The prisons have gotten rid of all their programming. So you can't have it both ways. So I'll be real curious what you get from them. Thank you.
I'll keep you posted.
I can't help myself. Also, we got a bill in the Senate to make sure that everybody on Medicaid is able to work, and if they're able to work, they're going to have to get a job in order to make up that difference. But what's happened in other states that have done this, they have such the people on Medicaid everybody would have to requalify. And so everybody in the system has to requalify, and a lot of people don't know how to do it, and they end up getting kicked off. And we've had federal lawsuits, and it turned out in Arkansas, they did that, and thousands of people were kicked off of Medicaid that belonged on it. And then that puts more pressure on everything. And so they took it to the courts, and it was blocked. Their law was blocked. But I don't know with the new administration in the court system, how that'll affect it. And I was doing a little research to it, and the judge, really, his ruling was going to affect all states. So that would affect what Iowa was going to do. But we've got different judicial system here.
They used to say, activist judges, back then, they're nothing like what they got today. So we'll see what happens.
Team lead for.
You might want to speak up. Get close to the mic.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Better.
Team lead for this project I'm doing about team distracted driving, because it's a main problem going around currently. I just wanted to know, since everybody's here, which would be a great time to ask if all of you on board are voting yes for the SF 22 hands-free distracted driving bill.
Yes.
Absolutely.
We tried to get this and for the last few years, actually, Tony Thompson. I got it. See, I was grabbing, I knew I was gonna get yelled at by the teachers. We tried to get that passed a few years back and our colleagues didn't want to touch it. What has happened now is families have died, people have died. So now we're gonna get it passed. So I am for sure a yes, I've been a yes and really pursue that. So I'm glad to see that you have a task force working on that as well locally, because not everybody loves it, but you're right, it causes problems and we've lost some good people because of distracted driving. And it's not just teens, by the way.
Yeah.
My husband and I were hit by a gal. She was on the phone. She sideswiped. There's three of us, actually. She got three of us. And she was on her phone, but her daughter was the passenger. When we stopped the accident, her daughter got out and said, "Mom, that wouldn't have happened if you weren't on your phone." The mom was on the phone. Mom was on the phone. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll support it too.
Thank you for being here.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Is the microphone loud enough? So, my name is Jeremy Everett. That's my boss's boss over there at Tom. Guess I'm also a mental health provider. My question is about how we're going to address the mental health crisis in Iowa. We are currently ranked 51st, which is, and I tripled the population of beds available in Guam and Puerto Rico. We're also, so really we're like 54th in beds. In Iowa, there's 2 per 100,000 people available, less than any other state in the country. I have several students on my caseload currently. I'm a school-based therapist working with children 5 to 14 who go to Minnesota, Illinois, Missouri, and Nebraska for inpatient mental health services. That means they're students who may lose their lives if they don't receive these services. However, I also have many number of students who need these services, but the wait time is 3 to 6 months, sometimes over 9 months in Iowa. Iowa used to take pride in its mental health ranking. We are 4th in something though. We are 4th in the increase in serious mental illness in the country. And is significant increase in suicide. My question is, how are we going to address the mental health crisis in Iowa in terms of both ensuring that we have appropriate number of providers? I've been a rural provider in places like Plainfield and so on. Very difficult places to work in mental health. And I've also been working with refugees and immigrants every day. So there's a significant decline in Iowa's progress in mental health and a significant increase in the mental health concerns. I even worked with some students who survived the Perry shooting. And they were talking about the mental health crisis and what that could have done to prevent the shooter from acting. So again, my question is, what can we do to improve the situation in Iowa in terms of mental health?
Well, hey, if I could go. Yeah, thank you very much. It's something that I worked on fairly closely for several years now, and I've worked with Tom and several other providers of mental health services. But in the state of the speech from the governor just recently, she never even mentioned mental health in her speech. And, if if you look at it, and I've shared this several times, that the largest provider of mental health services in our state is our correction system. You know, if you just look at police, sheriffs, our prisons, they end up having, you know, a lot of things that they have to deal with within that correction system. The other thing that I've seen is, and I've worked with some providers. Say, for instance, if you're a provider of mental health services and you're not connected to like Mercy One or another healthcare provider, but you're private, you won't get the money for the cost of providing those coverage. And we should make that available, you know, because you know, I've had several tell me over the years is that, you know, they just can't provide their services because it's not covered. And, you know, if you look at many of the things relative to mental health, we have a shortage here in the state of psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors within the system. And one of the areas that I think would be of great interest would be if you're going to a university here in Iowa, private or public, and you're taking those courses, that if you stay here in Iowa, we'll reimburse your tuition costs. You know, if you stay here for 8 to 10 years, I think that in reality would be really a good step. And just one other area I just got to mention is Governor Branstad, when he was in office, he closed several mental health facilities in the state. And one of the big ones was Independence. Now, for some reason, it's started up again, but it's just not really helping people. And, you know, I've talked with people that stress, anxiety, all those things really cause harm, depression, and those things. And I know Tom and this young lady here with them, that they have to deal with that stuff too. So I'm hopeful, and I think Ann Meyer might be somebody. She's a Republican House and she's a medical person. You know, she's been one that I've been able to work with, and I'm sure Timmy has too. I think that would be another step, because the word needs to go. And I've shared it down there several times, but I don't know, they just don't listen to us on those issues.
Jeremy, and I'll send it to you. So HHS presented to our committee this week about the child mental health, and next week they're doing an adult mental health, and they're kind of mapped out their plan going forward. There's some good in there and some, you know, a lot of words in some of it, but I did kind of corner them on how many kids are we still, because one of their goals is to not send kids out of the state, and to eliminate waiting lists and to decrease ER stays, right? Because last year, if you guys remember, there was a young lady who was living in the Mercy One ER. So if she had enough problems, she was living in a little bitty room in the ER. So those were their 3 goals. Now, I said in this new plan, you know, how close will we be at getting rid of that waiting list? And she said, not as close as she should. Right now, we have 12 children that are Iowans that are living in other states right now for treatment. That's what she's telling me. Currently, we were at 20 and they've down to 12. But she has some things going forward. However, what I would like to do is send it to you guys and have you kind of look at it and see what they're projecting and what they're thinking. And then maybe you guys can give me some feedback, because I do have a really good relationship with Director Garcia. So maybe we could share that. Or if you wanted to come down a day, we could set up a meeting and actually have a conversation. And that might be, even better. I know that's a day away from work, so I get that. But if you have that opportunity and could give me a leeway, you know, I could set that time up where we could actually have a sit down. And I do feel like those are productive times. And I do feel like they are willing to listen and take in information. So that might be an option too. Just think about it. And if we could coordinate, you know, a trip to come down, that might be a good way to address some things too. But I will send that packet to you as well. Okay.
I also have a few comments. My colleagues, they have been working on the mental health issue for quite a while. And for me, when I introduce a bill or try and get a bill into the system, it comes from you, my constituents, just like Representative Brown Power said. Get a hold of us, let us know. But the bill that I introduced this time around was because one of my constituents got in contact with me. Her family member is in prison. And he has been given psychotic drugs without any type of a mental health diagnosis. So what I have done is I have talked with staff and we're drafting a bill that addresses mental health in the Department of Corrections. Because like Representative Kresick said, is that's where they're housing a lot of the mental health patients. I worked with Tony Thompson for years as far as a group that we had put together to work with him, community members. And that was one of the things that Tony told me, and it was a problem that rather than taking individuals to the hospital where they needed to go, they brought him to his jail and he had to protect them and keep them safe. So for me, once again, if you have an issue, something that you think might need to be put into law, let us know, because that's what we do. So thank you.
I'd like to comment on
Oh,
that.
yes, okay.
And I'll speak close to the mic. I've spoken with Sheriff Neff just a few days after he got on as sheriff. And he said that mental health is a big problem. And he said there does have to be something to be done with it. And he wants to talk about that. And so do I. While I was on city council, I was councilman at large in Cedar Falls for 4 years. And I went to our city manager and I said, we've got to have a psychologist on duty 24 hours a day with our police department. I said, I don't ever want somebody sending a student to Cedar Falls and them attempting suicide and not getting help. I want them, whether they graduate or not, I want them safely home eventually. And this was a priority of mine, because when these students come to Cedar Falls, I always consider that we need to take care of them. It's their first time away from home. I've been in the manufactured housing business my entire life, and I'll see these young homeowners and not act the way they should. And we give them a little time to get acclimated. But he said to me, he goes, we're not going to spend that. It was $250,000 was all to have somebody, 3 shifts. You didn't have to pay them a tremendous amount. And he said to me, you say you're a huge conservative, but this is a liberal type program. And I said, you don't get it. This is a government type program. That's why we pay our tax dollars, so we can spend it wisely. And this is something we need to spend it on. So it's a problem everywhere. And we need to do that in certain places, especially between law enforcement, where they get the same reoccurring people who aren't real criminals. They just have a mental health issue. So I'm 100% for that, to start there and see where it goes from there.
I'm Sherry Dargan, and I want to thank first all of you. We appreciate the things you do. And I should say I'm president of League of Women Voters. And we have many, many wonderful programs, organizations that work with us. We appreciate all of our partners. I'm here and I'll be very short. I wanted to follow up on Barb. And Barb, can I say thank you? I may have an unusual perspective. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands of how many people have been a young single mom in the line at a food box. but I was. And for 3 years, I was on welfare, getting my college degree and working hard, but you know how that goes. What I wanted to ask you very succinctly is, what can we do? What can we, the citizens, do to put pressure on the governor to change her mind? I read a couple articles about, she had a program where she wanted to give them little boxes. And I'm thinking, do those little boxes have fresh milk, eggs, butter, peanut butter? I mean, you know, what are those little boxes about? And what is the issue? Has she given a good reason for why she won't take that money? And how do you get her to change your mind?
I don't know how to change your mind, but I think that the best thing that we can do at this point is really work through our legislation to really push to make sure that we're utilizing those kinds of things. I think a letter to her is okay, but I don't, but I think really working through the legislature is to get, you know, working with the senators, working with the House of Representatives to really make sure that we're utilizing those dollars and we're getting all the dollars that we can and making sure we're taking care of our kids. So.
Thank you. And this will be our last question.
See everyone here today. 4 Democrats, 1 Republican, all these other people that were invited and didn't show. My opinion is, I don't know if I want to vote for any of those guys anymore. As far as unions are concerned, my second job, as soon as I got out of high school, the next day, was United Steelworkers. I went to the open heart as a freshman. And that taught me a whole lot about how things work. The government works with seniority. The longer you've been there, the more powerful they think you are. And let me emphasize that. They think you are. You're really not any different than the day you walked in there. What I want to see is unintentional consequences eliminated. Iowa, when I came here, was 3rd in the nation in education. My kids were so smart, they all moved out of the state. They all got better jobs too. And they have no intention of ever coming back. That's an unintentional consequence. How about another one? How about the bottle bill? Nobody likes to talk about that. Well, why don't you go into some states that don't have bottle bills and see what they look like? They look like garbage dumps. Yeah, that's true. A nickel for a can or a bottle is not enough anymore. Should be a dime. There's a lot of states that have that. But then again, look at the police. I was riding my bicycle. Oh, I only got 20 seconds. That's not fair. You didn't tell me that. I object, Your Honor. He counts that time too. The bottle bill is good, but there's an unintended consequence. A friend of mine was riding his bicycle and he had 5 bottles in it. He stopped in a crosswalk. Another car came and ran him over, flattened his front tire. And you know what the police did? We got to take you to the hospital to have you have an alcohol test on your blood. Now, the person that hit him was talking on their phone when they went around the corner. Did they have to have their phone records identified? Oh, no.
It was the person on the bicycle who stopped in the crosswalk that was at fault. That's an unintended consequence. You talk about water quality.
Sir, do you have a question?
Yes, I'm trying to get these
Okay.
legislators to do things more than what they're
Okay.
doing now. And that means think about other things besides just the media things that are associated with each bill they're passing. Water quality, we should install streets, driveways, or sidewalks. We shouldn't fertilize our lawns. Because where does that all go? Into our lakes and waters. And as far as Iowa is concerned, I wouldn't eat any fish out of any water in Iowa. So let's get these legislatures on the job to look at more than just the medial things that they are.
Thank you. It is now time for closing comments, and legislators will have 2 minutes for their closing comments. And why don't we start at this end? They've been so patient and waited. We'll start at this end now.
Once again, thank you, League of Women Voters. It won't take me 2 minutes. For me, I'm blessed to be here. I'm blessed to be able to serve you all. And I intend on doing this for at least the next couple of years. So all of you stay well, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Mr. Sires?
Yes, thank you to the League of Women Voters for having this. On a couple last comments, I know it wasn't a question, but when my wife and I graduated, we met our first day of kindergarten, my wife and I. We went all through school together, but our first day of kindergarten, I always say that was my best day, and she says that was her worst day. But the thing about us is we graduated in the class of 1979 from Cedar Falls High School, and Cedar Falls High School, believe it or not, was #1 in the state. And Iowa in 1979 in education was #1 in the nation. So I've got to thank our educational system at that time. And for the life of me, I can't figure out what's gone bad, because the kids seem just as smart. And I don't get it. Now they're on their computers at young ages doing all kinds of stuff, and I don't get it. But he also touched on the bottle bill. My very first job was picking up trash. I started about 5 years old, got 50 cents an hour, and I was overpaid. But I picked up bottles, and I picked them up in the ditch, and I picked them up everywhere. And you know what? Thank God for the bottle bill. And it's just like you said, it cleaned everything up. And then people would pick the things up. We didn't have to do so much of that. And that actually was a godsend, that bottle bill. I love that bottle bill. So to close, I just want to say I represent the people of Senate District 38 and anybody else that comes up and talks to me, because together in Iowa, I want to make Iowa the greatest state again in everything. Thank you.
Me?
I'll be quick. Thanks everybody for coming tonight. I do appreciate it. Continue to reach out. I do enjoy that. I did bring for you kind of the budget projection 26 FY 26 through 29, and I just have a few copies. So if you want one just to kind of look through, you most certainly can grab one. If you have questions about it, let me know. And we'll see you in a few weeks, unless you come down and visit me. So give me a text and I'll get things set up for that.
Also, I want to thank everyone for attending. These forums have a tendency to kind of get thin at times, but we're in important times and crucial times in the legislature. And I want to thank Senator Sires for coming to this. I really appreciate it, because over the years, our Republican colleagues and represent this district, and we have a House member, a Republican, that hasn't attended any of them. And in the past, they used to come, and there were some people in the audience that kind of got up and were a little over derogatory and wasn't very professional about it. But this group is pretty good. So Senator Sires, thank you for being here. I hope you continue to come.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
I just want to say this. If I can help you in any way in the Senate, I will. But you got your work cut out for you, because the views that you have said today is really contradicting what has transpired by the majority party. And they all vote unanimously. So, you know, you got your work cut out for you. Let me put it that way. Thank you. Yeah, hey, thank you. And just your comments toward the end there, I appreciate them all. And everything you talked about, I've worked on at the Capitol for several years. And I don't think people quite understand the majority party decides what we do. We're in the minority party. We don't get to decide what they do. So it's frustrating, but I think that Timmy had a good point. You should send letters, you know, and stuff to legislators in the House and Senate, asking them to support what you had said and what everybody else had said today. So thank you very much.
Please join me in thanking our legislators for coming. And thanks to all of you for coming. February 21st is our next forum.
Good job.
Thank you all.
Thank you.